So what can our kids really expect in this mist-clouded future? What's likely for their work and life? What items that we can identify today poke up through that mystery? Well, let's look at one futurist's claim. He says humanity might change over the next 20 years as much as it did in the previous 300 years. To put that in context, this is a painting of William Penn landing in Pennsylvania, where he created Philadelphia, roughly 300 years ago. Take a look at that. Imagine if there's that much change in the next 20 years. Wow. Even if that's not completely accurate, let's look at the projection from a well-respected futurist, Ray Kurzweil. Kurzweil is Google's director of engineering. He's written 7 books, 5 bestsellers. One was regarded as the best book in science for that year. Winner of the National Medal of Technology, honored by 3 presidents. He's in the National Inventors Hall of Fame. PBS called him one of the 16 revolutionaries who made America. And that's from its beginning, one of the 16 most important people in American history. He's got 21 honorary doctorates, and it's said that about 80% of his projections for the future are accurate. Well, what does he say? He says by around 2030, a $1,000 laptop will have the processing power of one human brain. Wow. To put that in context, let's look at some of the other aspects of brains. In 2015, a respected technology organization estimated that the human brain at that time was about 30 times more powerful than a supercomputer. Then it said, but it expects the two to be equivalent sometime between 2022 and 2029. So if we look at speed, the speed of information transmission through neurons is about 10 million times slower than the speed between 2 electronic neurons. Wow. But in contrast, the neuronal connections in the human brain, trillions of them, are greater than the number of stars in the known universe. Wow. So there's a lot to think about here. It's a complex issue. Let's take a look at a graph to help us see how to think about this. So this is a graph of technology advancement over a 10-year period. The next 10 years, starting at 2021. And the assumption is that technology doubles basically in its abilities every year. And that may be too much or too little, but the concept is the same. So after 1 year, technology is twice as good. After 2 years, it's 4 times as good. After 3 years, 8 times as good. And then 16. By 2026, it's 30 times greater than 5 years earlier. And then similarly doubling by the end of 2030, beginning of 2031, our technology is 1,000 times more powerful than it was 10 years earlier. Well, to help us think about this, let's look at this cartoon showing what a human would expect. That's the dotted line, where progress is sort of linear and predictable. But progress with technology isn't like that. It's exponential. So we see the surprise factor where you end up in a completely different place that you didn't plan for, not expecting this. Looking at this a little more deeply, Roy Amara expressed it really perfectly. He said that we humans overestimate the effect of a change of technology in the short run, but then it gathers steam, and before we know it, it's crossed our expectation threshold and just rocketed way past it. We underestimate the effect in the long run. This is how brains operate. But what changes should we expect in roughly 2021 to 2030? Well, our productivity is going to continue to dramatically increase with more automation. Our energy profile should improve quite a bit with more renewables. We'll still have issues, but the fossil fuels that pollute so much will be diminished, and the solar and wind energy and possibly fusion, which should really reduce the cost of energy. Wealth production will continue to go through the roof. That doesn't mean it will be evenly distributed. That's a cultural decision. So our health systems regarding genetics and pharmaceutical production, those are information sciences, so they are also exponential, like computer growth. We can expect dramatic health improvements along with that lifespan improvements, because lifespans have been increasing for over a century and they should continue to do so. But it's not all good news. The oceans will continue to rise and will continue to acidify, killing many species of marine life, maybe eliminating some of those that we eat. Climate, well, we don't know. We know what to do, but will our culture actually go and do it? Violence is interesting because the U.S. Has by far the greatest gun violence of any developed nation, but that's not true anywhere else in the world. And for centuries, violence has been lower and lower and lower. And we can expect that to continue, but I've made a smaller arrow to show maybe we'll see. But the big question is jobs, isn't it? So let's take a look at a different perspective, that of the entertainer. Now, the U.S. monitors its exports by exported goods, the things that can be put on a ship or a plane and go someplace. And the greatest U.S. export by that definition is machinery and computer technology. About $200 billion a year. It used to be aircraft, but not now. But where's entertainment? Well, that's not classified as an exported good, even though the U.S. entertainment industry is over $700 billion with all the movies and books and TV shows that are consumed around the world, our video games, magazines, sports events. So several observers think that really entertainment is our largest export and should be regarded as a really awesome job opportunity, because entertainment is not as easy to automate. It's a creative act, and creative work continues to grow and to increase in value. The guy to the right is worth over $1 billion. How's he earned that? Who is he? He's Andrew Lloyd Webber. He's a music composer, billionaire music composer. So in our new world, it may be more economically and enthusiastically viable for a student to become a musician or an artist or a writer than maybe an MBA. Who knows? Let's look at three more. So the entrepreneur is really the part of our society that creates the massive numbers of new ideas. The big companies often claim them by buying the little entrepreneurial companies. The small business owners are huge job creators. Most of the jobs in the U.S. are employed by small or medium-sized businesses. The big companies have already reduced their employment over decades through automation. So the small business sector should probably be the last to actually automate and benefit from AI. So jobs are probably safe there. The restaurateur. Do you want to eat at a chain restaurant, or do you want to eat at some bespoke, great ethnic place with a memorable experience? So no question about it, jobs will change. And some will be lost, some will be created. Most jobs are not 100% repetitive, which means they can't be 100% automated. So the estimate is that maybe 45% of current jobs are vulnerable to AI, machine learning, and automation. But that doesn't mean they can be directly replaced. Now, most jobs will change. New jobs will be created. Often there'll be more creative jobs. There'll be fewer dirty, boring, and repetitive jobs because that part of those jobs may be what is first automated. There'll be a greater value for jobs involving human touch, so like nursery school teachers or hairdressers, tattoo artists. There'll be greater value for things of personal preference, where people will be less interested in the cheapest thing because things will be cheap with automation, and less interested in what everybody else is getting. They'll want something that maybe has a human touch, maybe something handmade. That's a job. Education is what will make the difference between people who get the new jobs that are created and those who don't. Maybe with automation and AI, we'll have shorter work weeks. Maybe if our culture chooses a universal basic income. So to have a really informed voice on this, let's listen to Peter Diamandis from the information he gleaned from 2019 in his 2020 book, The Future's Faster Than You Think. These are the things that we should be told through our media, but they aren't the most newsworthy. This is some of the lowest unemployment the U.S. has ever had. Almost everybody who wants to work is working. We actually have 7.5 million open jobs and only 6 million people who will want work. But most of those 6 million are not qualified for the 7.5 million open jobs. Now, wages, even minimum wages, are some of the highest they've ever been in history, adjusted for inflation. And wages at the low end are growing faster than productivity is growing. So that doesn't seem like a formula for massive job loss. As an example, in the 1990s, law firms adopted legal discovery software to find case law that fit each case they were trying. And the outcome they expected was, well, if you're a paralegal or a law clerk, too bad for you. All of your work, or much of it, will be done, it will be automated. It didn't work out that way because the highly efficient AI systems generated so much, they discovered so many relevant cases that it took more paralegals and more law clerks to go through all of that. Not what was expected. Similarly, BMW replaced a fully automated part of its plant with a combined human and robot team approach. They found that human and robot team increased their productivity 85%. Wow. You think internet may have eliminated some jobs, and it did. But in the developed countries, for every job that the internet eliminated, over 2.5 were created. So how should we think about this stuff? Well, maybe humanity will change more in 20 years than it did in the last 300. More or less, the actual degree doesn't matter. But let's think of the perception of these kids who are entering school and who will live in that society. This future with AI and machine learning is different from past changes because of the addition of intelligence and learning in the automated systems. That actually could be the best thing that ever happened to us. So, big ideas, human-machine partnerships are one way that we can foresee jobs being solidified. As many, we don't know, but a big deal. The jobs in our world are changing rapidly, and we can expect massive change, so much so that the big question is, how do we prepare our kids for this future? And how do we train both kids and adults for these future jobs? Well, one of the main ways is for teachers to try to understand the drivers of these changes and for them to teach the students about these. And then to prepare themselves and their students for the skills that are needed not to survive in this world, but to thrive in this new world of intelligence and machine learning.